Good evening, and welcome to this week's Black Mental Health is Black Health. I'm Bronwyn, your host, the Black Couch Therapist. Here to help you become a better you, here to talk about all things mental health. And what is that? Everything impacts our mental health. Tonight, we're going to be talking about ADHD and medication. Oh my, that's going to be a bit much. And as always, I have an amazing guest because I only talk to amazing people. But first, we start with some deep breathing, 3 deep cleansing breaths to allow us to woosah from the day and just move on and listen. So let's take 3 deep cleansing breaths. I'll count us into 4. In 4 and out 4. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Let's get started. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. One more, in, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, just a moment to allow you to calm and recenter from the end of the day. How was that breathing for you?
Oh, that felt really nice. That
I
felt
always
really
say that I'm glad that breathing is something we can do any time of day or night just to stop and just decompress, make us feel a little better. Well, tonight we're going to talk about ADHD and not just medication, but how it impacts the individual. But first, I always ask my guests to introduce yourself and tell us something cool about yourself.
okay. My name is Dr. Malikah Marshall, and I am a parent and educator um, in the state of Texas, Houston specifically. And what's cool about me is that I am a straight uh, person that does all kinds of collecting. And so one of the things that I like to collect is Star Wars and Star Trek memorabilia. I
Oh,
think that's pretty
wow.
cool about me.
That is cool. My younger sister, who has now passed away, she was a Trekkie, and she would have loved your collection because that was her vibe for sure. Well, tonight I want to talk about just ADHD, and the reason I wanted to do that, school is about to start, and parents are thinking about their child and how their child is functioning in school, and they say my child has ADHD. I don't believe it, or I think my child has ADHD, and they say no. So it's so much about it. It's a very controversial thing, and there are studies that show that African American males specifically have been over diagnosed and miss, and some things have been missed when that wasn't it. It would become a catch-all, but it is real. And so tonight we kind of want to look at that. So as an educator, um, no, first just tell us, what is your personal journey with ADHD?
Well, my son started to show some signs early on in preschool. And I just really was at a place where I didn't know what quite to do with him. I started to get reports from daycare that he was like just all over the place, hyper stuck to routines. If there was a sub, he would throw him all off. And then they started to tell me about like behavioral things that I never saw anywhere else. So I was like, well, maybe, his speech is a little bit behind. He's a boy. He talks a lot, but it wasn't always intelligible speech. So let me take him to like the PPCD screener to see if it's his speech
Mm-hmm.
that's making him act out in some different ways. During the time that we were there, he went to play with the dollhouse and he told me, Mommy, the toilet won't flush. And the speech pathologist and the educational diag was like, did the 2-year-old just use the word toilet? I was like, well, it actually is a toilet, right? And they were like, Marshall, take your smart baby home and find a different a different school, different setting. I said, okay. So they were telling me that he maybe needed to be challenged more, so that he wouldn't have to act out because he was
Mm-hmm.
so smart. Found a place, a private school that would take him, and it was night and day. He was in that setting, and he didn't have any behavior problems. I mean, he just was a really regular fit in kid, right? Uh, but then the pandemic came, and I was like, maybe I want him a little closer to school. So I started bringing him into public school. And that's when they started telling me that there's a problem here. There's a problem here. Um, maybe you might want to get him evaluated. I was like, how can there be a problem? The private school's curriculum is so much higher than the public school curriculum. Maybe it's the teacher. And working at that school, I knew who was a really strong teacher, who wasn't. So I was like, oh, I think it's just the teacher. I think it's just the classroom. Oh, this is a first year teacher. I had a lot of excuses, but at the end of the day, my baby wasn't making the progress that he was making or that I thought he should be making. Um, just doing homework with him at home and trying to do like letter sounds and that kind of thing. He would know it by the time we would finish, our little 30-minute practice. And he would know it Monday, Tuesday. We wouldn't do it on Wednesday, get to Friday, and it's like he had never seen it before.
Hmm.
Well, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just too harsh, because I'm an educator. And I even went and put him in mathnasium. I paid for an at-home tutor and to try to make sure that he would be caught up. But again, he still struggled with some of that retention. And so one of the speech pathologists told me, well, try karate. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try karate because that's supposed to be something that really
Mm-hmm.
to be able to focus and that kind of thing. Again, same pattern in karate. He excelled up the belts quickly. If it was a kata for that he was doing presently, he'd have it. If he was asked to do something that was, maybe a white belt or a yellow belt, and he's green or blue, it was like he had never seen it before. And so I said to myself, I can continue to do this, but I don't want to be one of those people that are like, well, not my kid. I want to make sure that the learning gaps that he was having didn't get so big he couldn't overcome them.
So his gaps were not just academic. You were seeing this, like you say, in karate outside and at home. So
Mm-hmm.
for you, it wasn't just a school issue. This was, like you say, those learning gaps were across the board.
Yes, and my mother being a baby boomer, her first response was, he's faking it, just spank his butt, get on him, just spank his butt. He'll listen, he'll remember what it is you're telling him to do. And I'm just like, I'm not going to say I didn't try that a little bit, just to see, but it was to a point where I felt like I can't spank him every day. It's not effective, right? Um, I didn't like doing it. He didn't like getting it, and it wasn't changing the pattern of behavior.
Right. Didn't change behavior.
So there was no purpose in doing this. So I was like, let me just go ahead and find somebody that I can actually talk to. So I knew that there was an educational psychologist in Midtown, and she worked with a lot of CPS kids. And I had seen her in my journey for fertility. I had, gone out and sought out some outside therapy to try to help gauge my emotions and make sure that I was mentally healthy in that journey. So I knew she worked a lot with kids. I went over there. I let her evaluate him. And one of the things that she said is that she doesn't like to label Black boys that early. She said he did have tendencies, but that she gave me some actionable items to take to the school to try in a 504 plan. I really liked that because I was like, okay, this is not just, oh, okay, we're sending you to the pediatrician. Let's get some
Mm-hmm.
medicine. Let's go. It was, hey, try these items first to see if he can stay, on task. He can stay on target. He wouldn't get up out of his seat. He would sit there during the whole time, right? But he still wasn't getting the information. He wasn't processing it. He wasn't
Mm-hmm.
remembering. So she said he had tendencies of ADHD inactive. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that eventually became a combination because he did have the other items that that with the hyperactivity as well. It's just that he had enough self-control to be able to sit in class. He just wasn't always listening. The pediatrician tried to give me some medicine, and I say tried because I did accept the prescription, but I played with it because I was like, he's really too young. He's only 6. Let's see what else we can do. We have the karate. Okay, maybe we're gonna add something else. We have swim class, we have karate, we have gymnastics after school. Thinking that some of that physical activity may help to increase, his focus and being able to stay on task. But I still saw that memory, that short term memory.
So you feel that you did all of the extra things other than medicine. What made you finally say, okay, you know what? This isn't working? What took you to the point of, I'm going to do this?
He still struggled in reading. And it was just bizarre to me because in preschool, when I would come to pick him up, I would say, okay, go get your artwork. He'd turn over everybody's paper, see his name. He'd see the other kids' names. He would start to try to pass their stuff out to them. And I'm like, hey, don't just get yours. Right. And I just thought that he would be a better reader, especially when his comprehension was so high. He didn't have, you couldn't like see the moon during the daytime and then say, oh, the moon hasn't gone to bed yet. He would be like, Mommy, that doesn't make any sense. You'd have to explain about the rotation of the earth and how we're facing the moon at night and then not facing the moon during the day. Right. And he was like, oh, okay. Those are the conversations I would have with him.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to have this conversation with him, for him to have this level of mental cognition, but then not see that in reading and math, it just was bizarre.
So that was a disconnect for you as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
How
And
old was he when you finally allowed him to be placed on medication?
I think it was more 8. I went into the classroom to meet with the teacher to see, how he was doing, check in on his 504 plan, see how he was responding to those actions that the educational diagnostician had given me. And he had papers, he hadn't even finished writing his name. And now he's at the same school as me. So I passed by and I would look into the window. I took the long way to the restroom, look in the window, see what he's doing. He's sitting there, but he just couldn't get that
Mm-hmm.
concentration to completion. You know, Other kids
So
are
that
talking.
was second grade, 8 years old?
Grade, second grade. So I said, okay, let's go. Let's start with the medicine. Third grade, I actually went into his class because his teacher was a first year teacher and I was an instructional coach at that campus. Let me go in and teach the math for this teacher. He was first year and he wasn't comfortable. He really wanted to just do ELA, but let me go ahead and help him with
Mm-hmm.
that. And I could tell, like, he was like really silly, unfocused, tying his shoe lace for like 5 minutes.
And this
Those
is
shoes,
before medication.
yeah. Well, we were just starting to get on it
Okay.
uh every day. And yeah, I was like, did you go to the nurse? And he would say, no. I was like, okay, let's go to the nurse and then come back. And then I would actually see concentration. So I saw for myself what he was
Mm-hmm.
able to do and not do in the classroom. And so I just was like, okay, we need to stick with this every day. We need to have a routine. I had the school give it to him. I had people watch him at lunch to make sure he ate. because it did decrease his appetite. I want to say that right now he's going to be in the 7th grade. I feel like this is the best combination of medicine. He hasn't lost weight. He hasn't had the headaches or the stomach aches from some of the other prescriptions.
So let
What?
me ask you this. When you say that, so he was it one time you took one med and it worked, or did you have to change over time?
No, I had to stay on top of it. And I have a niece who was taking medicine in high school. And one of the things that, she would complain about how it would make her feel, we would go back to the psychiatrist, they would just increase it. And I remember telling her mom, if she's telling you that this is making her feel a certain way, do you think that increasing it is the best thing for her? So, eventually she stopped taking all of the medicine and then there was problems
Mhm.
there. But she's older now. She's almost 30. She's back on track. She advocates for herself. But what I really wanted to make my baby, even though he was so young, I wanted him to be an advocate for how he feels, right?
Mhm.
Let's have honest conversations. I didn't want to be the person to say, well, you just have to take it and that's just it. No, let's have a conversation. How did you feel today? Um, okay, well, let's try 2 weeks. And then you tell me at the end of 2 weeks what's still going on. Or let's try another 2 weeks. And it wasn't because I don't have that, like we don't have that community, like a support group for like Black moms with Black boys with ADHD. I didn't have a chance to talk to a lot of people, right?
Mhm.
Um, it wasn't until like I'm in the neighborhood and we're outside and the kids are riding their bikes that the other mom says, "Yeah, my son has ADHD and he has a 504 plan. Do you have one?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And that we really had conversations with different people to know, oh, there's different families of medication. He doesn't have to take this type of stimulant. He can take
Mhm.
that type of stimulant, and really having that relationship with the psychiatrist that I would go to her and I would say, "Hey, I talked to another mom and she was saying that her son is in a different type. Is that something my baby could benefit from?" And having
Mhm.
that real conversation with her to where I felt like I trusted her. She listened to me because if she was one of the types that my niece had that just upped it, then I was going to start seeing somebody else, right?
And
But
that's something important is as the parent, especially when they're young, you have to be the advocate, but you also empowered your child. I
Mhm.
said, how do you feel? And letting him have the vocabulary and and you being patient enough to say, okay, well, what does that mean? How do, yeah. And that's something I think as parents, there may be parents who are listening who are thinking, we have all these negative thoughts about being on medication, especially, for a young child. And we can think of all the things people will say. But when you teach your child how to advocate for themselves and you advocate for them, that can make a difference.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear, "Oh, I just don't feel good." I had to
Mhm.
teach them how to be specific. I have a headache at the end of the day. My stomach is cramping and I drink a lot of water right after PE or before lunch or whatever, giving me that information that I need so that, when we go back to the psychiatrist, um, that we had those conversations. And I also made the psychiatrist, well, not made, but I requested monthly meetings for a while until I was more
Mhm.
comfortable with, okay, now we'll meet in 3 months or we'll meet in 6 months, right? So in the beginning it was every month because I was very adamant that if there was a medication issue, I didn't want to go a long time.
Right. How many changes did you have to make in medication before you found? Because you did say a few minutes ago, this is the right combination, which says to me, he's on more than one med and it took a minute to get there. So I'm not sure, maybe I didn't hear right, or
No,
that's tell
well,
me
he's
again.
on one with melatonin. Okay.
Okay.
Um, he was on like the old tried and true Focalin in the beginning, 5 milligrams, then 10 milligrams, then 15 milligrams. When he was on 15 milligrams, his BMI went under 14. And they said that was too low. We had to go back down to 10 milligrams. Then they wanted with the 10 milligrams because it was a stimulant, then he stopped sleeping. Um, it was not uncommon for him to, not fall asleep until 12, right?
Mhm.
So then they gave him something guanfacine to fall
Mhm.
asleep at night. And it was, but then the guanfacine, even though it was the 0.01 milligram or whatever the dose was, now he's falling asleep at school. So
Because it wasn't out of the system.
we were we went through some combinations. And we went through regular, we went through extended release. They did the extended release. He couldn't swallow a capsule, so we'd have to put it in applesauce. He hates the texture of applesauce. We put it in yogurt. He finally was able to swallow a capsule. I mean, it was a lot, you know. But he's on Vyvanse now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's 10 milligrams. And I've talked to the psychiatrist that was like, hey, on weekends, holidays, and summertime, I don't want to put him on it. Now, sometimes the psychiatrist is like he needs it all the time, or the pediatrician will say, well, he needs it all the time. But I, as the parent, I want him to not use being on medication as a crutch for his
Mm-hmm.
behavior. So while I have that time, being an educator and having the summer off, while I have that time, I want to uh, help guide him in decision making too, so that he learns that self control.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't. I don't give it to him in the summertime.
How
Now,
does
so
he feel about being on meds?
he didn't like it at first because he didn't like the way it made him feel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but around the fifth grade, he saw what he could do academically. So he started, especially for tests, with Texas and these STAR tests and these all day sit
Mm-hmm.
down with seat tests for little kids that adults don't do.
Right.
He started to advocate for himself. Like he can remember now. He's getting better
Mm-hmm.
grades. He's getting stronger academically, and it was a lot. It was a lot. I mean, the reading, we still had difficulties with the reading. I went ahead and broke down and let them test him for dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
Dyslexia, full blown special ed label. They do a full initial evaluation. They do the whole kit and caboodle.
Right.
And he truly is dyslexic. They said he's one of those cases where he's a true dyslexic. And that he had a pretty decent IQ. He was very smart, and that he can do it with those extra modifications and accommodations,
Mm-hmm.
especially for testing. So he did
So,
the test for reading, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade reading. He did not, but it was only by a little bit, and it wasn't in the reading; it was in the writing, which is to be expected with dyslexia students because the writing expectation is higher.
so he has ADHD and he's dyslexic. Do you think any of the early not being able to read was more the dyslexia than the ADHD?
Yes. At the time, I thought it was just the ADHD, though.
Okay.
Because at the private school, they do all of those things to, not have ADHD, like they use only cursive and some other things. They use this Abeka system that does syllables for the reading. It's not really, he was along with the rest of the kids, and they were straight grading. So he was passing classes. Now, again, like I said, I was paying for tutoring every month, and they were like, oh, you shouldn't have to tutor a kindergartner. Yes, because I want him to be on grade level,
Mm.
right?
So
So
the problems were there.
yes.
Let me ask you this, believe it or not, we're out of time. I wanted to share your story, but I want to ask you this. What could you say to parents who maybe have children of varying ages? Because it can go on and you can ignore it
Mhm.
even into high school. So you're an educator and you're a parent, and thanks for telling your story. What can you say to encourage parents to at least look into it, specifically parents of Black boys, to look into this
Whew.
and see? What can you say?
I, I think that it's more beneficial than not, because being in the classroom, when I see boys especially struggle with, the paying attention or the being in their seat. Sometimes it's as simple as they'll sharpen a pencil for 5, 10 minutes, 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes and miss the complete lesson. I try to make sure that they feel good about themselves, let them know that they're smart, that they're capable, even though they're struggling. But what happens is that after a while, that gap becomes bigger. In elementary, it's not that big of a gap. But definitely by junior high, high school, the gap is wider. And now not only do you have that academic gap, now you have this, emotional connection to, oh, I can't do it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's even, that's harder to overcome than the actual disability itself, right? The condition itself. And then unfortunately, what I've seen in some kids that are super smart, but just couldn't even sit still, that they start to self-medicate. And that's where you start to see some of that drug usage. And there was one student, I called him Mr. President because he was so smart. He was so brilliant. Um, he watched the news and he robbing somebody or whatever and was in prison. So
You
it's
know
just,
that you said that whole about drug uses. That is one thing people say that why they don't want to use it because they feel as if you're introducing drugs into the child's life.
well, that's the thing. Like when for this particular drugs for what I'm doing with my son or whatever, when we talk about how he was feeling, one of the things he would say is that it was like fuzzy, right? And that when he takes this medicine, it's clear. So that's a
Mm.
different feeling than that euphoria of like, marijuana or whatever, where they're trying to, alter their mood. His mood isn't altered to that euphoria. It's altered to be able to concentrate. And so he does, advocate for himself now. Hey, I have to go to the nurse to take my medicine. Or, now he's like, hey, we're just going to take it in the morning before you even drop me off, and it's because he knows that he can do it academically.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't, we
So for
don't have
him,
that.
he can see this has a positive effect on my life, and you can see that as a parent.
Mhm.
Um, if
Grades and everything. It's like night and day.
one more thing you could tell parents of how can they, you're on the inside and outside, how can they approach the school about this? We have about a minute and a half left.
Well, the school really won't do much as far as their hands are tied legally as to what they can and cannot do. You have to go ahead and be an advocate for your child and use your own resources. I tell parents, you have insurance, right? Okay, don't come over here to the school. Find your own educational psychologist, find your own pediatrician, find your own psychiatrist, especially ones that you have a good relationship with, that you trust, and that listen to what you say.
But for the parent who doesn't have insurance, because the school can do testing.
They can do testing, but they can't suggest medicine.
No, they can't. But I'm saying at least to get that ball rolling. Would you recommend?
Definitely, when they're not successful academically,
Mm-hmm.
all they have to do is just reach out to whoever is the 504 coordinator, because that a 504 is especially something easy that they can get into place and that they have a lot of control over.
Tell them our audience what 504 is.
It's a federal program from way back in the day, through IDA school law, that says that anybody that has any kind of disability can have certain accommodations in the classroom to help to make sure that they can be successful for whatever condition they have. It could be breaking your arm and needing somebody to write for you while that heals, all the way to ADHD as a health impairment.
And I just wanted to point that out because not everybody knows. And when we're in education, we'll throw out terms. And I'm an educator, so I get it. But
Oh,
everybody
yes,
doesn't.
yes,
So that's what I was like, well, what is 504? What does she mean? So
yeah.
I wanted to do that. So I want to thank you for being here and sharing your story. Sometimes just hearing someone's story, hearing someone's journey, um, can be inspiring, can make someone take action. So thank you for sharing your journey and your
Thank you.
story.
Thank
Um,
you.
I always like to end with a call to action. And my call to action is this for parents. I get it. Meds are not the thing we normally want. But as your child may be struggling in school, not that that's your first thought is, oh, they need medication, but seek help. Don't just let them flounder. And don't feel bad about yourself as a parent if you've let it go longer than you feel. Take action to make your child be successful. Well, I am Miss B. I am the Black Couch Therapist. I am here to help you become a better you. And Dr. Malikah Marshall, thank you again for coming and sharing your story. And I'll see you guys next week. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.